Today I'll show you not only how to build, but also how to deploy a full web application using Claude Code. I'll walk through every step as if you're a complete beginner. By the end of this video, you can have a fully functioning application that's deployed on your own domain that other people can actually access. Let's dive in. So to get started here, there's a few things that we should download and install. Now, first, of course, is Claude Code. Now, in order to use Claude Code, you do need a premium subscription with Claude, so you are going to have to pay for this, just like really any of these AI tools. But you can download it once you have that subscription by going to the website, which I'll leave a link to down below. You can download the desktop application or run this command, which is going to install the terminal application for you. Now, you want the terminal application. This is what we'll be using in this video because it's going to be better for the deployment process. And what I mean by that is that Claude has its own desktop application, right? So you can download Claude and open it. You can see I was brainstorming some video ideas here, and you can switch over to kind of this code tab where you can start using it from this view. Now, this is fine, but it's a lot easier to use Claude Code directly from the terminal, where what you do is you open up a terminal like so, and you type the command Claude. This will then run Claude Code for you directly inside of the terminal. Now, I know a lot of you already have this downloaded, but if you don't, what you're going to do is open up your terminal, whether you're on Mac, Linux, or Windows, and you're going to paste that command that you found from this website. So curl, fssl, whatever, and then just run it. When you do that, it's going to download and install Claude Code for you. And then once that's finished, you can invoke Claude Code by typing the command Claude. When you do that, it's going to bring you inside of here. You'll likely need to authenticate, so sign into your account, and then you're good to go. Now, once you've got Claude Code installed, the next thing that you're going to want is to download some type of code editor or IDE. Now, I recommend Cursor, but you can really use anything that you want as long as it's a VS Code fork, because to deploy the project, we're going to use a cool extension, which we'll have a look at in a second. Anyways, for now, I'm just going to go to the Cursor website. This is a place where you can write code and you can view all of the files. This is free to download. You can simply press the button and download it for Windows, Mac, or Linux. Again, I'll leave a link to it in the description. Free, just download it, install it, and then you are good to go. Now, at this point, I'll assume that you've installed Claude Code and you have some type of code editor or IDE. Now, in case you're wondering, once we build the application, we're going to use a platform called Hostinger to deploy it. They're a long-term partner of mine, but anyways, we'll talk about that later. Okay, so for now, once we've got that all installed, what we're going to do is just open up Cursor on our computer. So just find that application. I'm just going to search for it in the Spotlight search. And what we're going to do is just make a new folder where we can put our application. So we're going to go File. We're going to go to Open Folder from Cursor. We're going to go to our desktop or any location that you can remember. And what I'm going to do is just make a new folder, and I'm going to call this My Site. Call it anything that you want if you have an idea of what it is that you want to build. Okay, so now what we've done is we've opened up a new folder inside of Cursor. Now, you really don't need to know too much about this. This is just a tool that we're going to use to be able to view the different code that we're generating, and it makes it a little bit easier for us to understand what's going on, to add an image, and to eventually deploy the site. Now, we're going to use Claude Code directly inside of Cursor, so there's no need to worry about this kind of agent tab that's going to appear when you get into the editor, so we can just go ahead and close that. Now, this is what's called a fork of a popular editor known as Visual Studio Code. So if you've ever used that before, this is effectively the exact same thing. It just has some AI features built in. You're going to see a ton of stuff here. Again, don't confuse yourself. Literally, all you want to do is just look for this little file menu on the left-hand side. You can see that it kind of looks like two files. You should see that my site is open. And now when we start generating code, we're going to see all of it appear on the left-hand side here. You can move the windows around, you can reorganize it if you want, you can collapse the sidebar, but that's really all that you need to know. Okay, so from here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna look for this little extensions icon. It might have moved, it might go somewhere else, but we're looking for something called extensions, which looks like these kind of little puzzle pieces. You also might have to find it by expanding this right here to see all of the different options. Now, what we're gonna start by doing is installing the Claude Code extension inside of this editor. So you'll see we have Claude Code, mine's already installed, but all we're going to do is search for it and then press install. Okay, and that should install Claude Code for us. Now, the next extension we're going to install while we're here is the Hostinger extension, which we're going to use later to actually deploy our site. So you can go to Hostinger, just search for it again, find this Hostinger connector, and then just go ahead and press on install. We're going to trust the publisher and then install that inside of our editor. That's it, we have the extensions, and now we can start building our app. So what we're going to do now is open up Claude Code inside of this editor. Remember, I told you that you could open it in the terminal, but you also can open it directly inside of these editors so you can view the files. So to do that, you can press this little down arrow and you can find this Claude Code icon. You'll see I have some icons here you don't have because I have other extensions. So I'm just going to press on Claude Code, and you'll notice that it's going to open for us kind of a new session view right here. And we should see we have web, we have local, and we can press this button, new session. Now, when we press new session, it's going to open a new Claude Code session for us, hopefully in the big view. If you want to move it around, you can drag this window and kind of change the size of it. And here we can start prompting Claude to actually generate stuff for us. Now, I'm also just going to go back to the file view. So we have the files on the left-hand side and Claude Code on the right. Now, you'll notice here that there's an option that says prefer the terminal experience, switch it back in settings. So if you've used Claude Code before, you know that you can use it from kind of this really terminal-y environment where it's not very pretty. There's not like a graphical user interface. But right now we're inside of this clean UI that it's created for us. So if you want to go back to the terminal, you could press this button, right? And we can change it so that we're launching it in the terminal rather than in the native UI. Now, for most of you, especially if you're a beginner, I'd recommend you just keep it in the default view. But if you want to change that, you can directly from the settings here in Cursor. Okay, so from here, just a few quick options to go over. You'll notice that there's a button down here that says Edit Automatically, Ask Before Edits, or Plan Mode. It also gives you the ability to change the amount of effort that you want to use. The more effort is the longer it's going to take, and also more expensive it's going to be in terms of the number of credits that you use. So what we're going to do is just leave it in Edit Automatically, and we'll put the effort at medium rather than high. Now, another thing we're going to want to look at is this slash button right here. So if we go here, there's a bunch of different options for things that we can change. One thing that we'll want to do is just switch the model. So you'll see where it says model, we can switch the model, and I'll just leave it as the default here of Opus 4.7. But if you want it to be cheaper, if you don't have a Claude Max plan, for example, you can make it Sonnet, which is usually a lot more cost effective, or even Haiku if you want it to be, the cheapest possible. Anyways, we'll go with this Opus 4.7 and use that for now. All right, so everything is set up now and it's time to actually start building. And when we're building with Claude Code, it's really important that we know what it is that we want to build and that we come up with a little bit of a plan or kind of a spec before we actually dive in and start generating any code files. Now, in my case, I'm just going to build a really simple landing page because I think that's what a lot of you guys are building, just simple websites, maybe something for a business that you're running, whatever, right? But you want to have a clear outline of what are the features that I want to have, what do I want the website generally to look like, are there logos that I have, is there a color theme that I want to use? Doing a little bit of planning on your own beforehand is going to be really helpful and give you a significantly better result. So what I recommend doing is kind of going into Claude Code and just dumping your thoughts to it and telling it, hey, help me come up with a plan, ask me some questions, let's go through this before we start generating some code. So I'll just do a bit of a made-up example here where I make a website about myself. So I'm going to say, hi, I want to make a portfolio website for myself, Tim Rosica, or Tech with Tim. I don't really know exactly what I want to be on the website, but I want to put some of my prior work experience. I want to put some of my skills, characteristics, and maybe reasons why I should get hired, and maybe some different projects from my GitHub I want to showcase on there as well. Now, can you ask me a bunch of questions about the design, what the pages should look like, just any information that you need to help me build this site? Let's get a clean kind of spec and plan going before we start building anything. I'd like you to create a markdown file that's going to have all of the information for the site before we start building. Again, ask me any questions that you need. Okay, so what I did is I said, hey, this is kind of what I want. Ask me some questions, let's go back and forth, and then notice I told it create a markdown file, which is a specific type of file that AI agents are really good at working with that's going to have all of these details saved so we have them inside of the project. Okay, now what I did to do this, by the way, is something called Whisper Flow. It's the best voice dictation tool out there. You can see that I am an absolute power user with 111,000 words. It's free to use, and I have a long-term partnership with them, so I'll leave a link to it in the description. But it's just really good for being able to voice your thoughts very quickly as opposed to typing. So I'm going to go ahead and press on enter here, and we're going to get it to start generating this plan, and I'll go through the questions and kind of walk you through what I'm doing here and all of the prompts that I'm writing. Okay, so while we're in this process, it may also be asking us to approve some different commands. So I'm just going to go ahead and press on yes. Of course, you can look at what it wants to do, but sometimes it's not really going to make sense to you. And in that case, you can just approve it. It will go execute the commands, etc. All right, so we can see that it's asking me some questions here. It says, what do you want to attract clients, personal brand? Let's go with personal brand for this one. What's the structure? Let's just go with a single long landing page. What aesthetic do you want? Let's go with like, yeah, dark and modern-y, and then what tech stack we should use, and this is super important. Now, if you're building a relatively simple website, you're almost always going to want to go with Next.js and then Tailwind, so the stack that's recommending right here. And if it doesn't recommend a stack, I would suggest telling it to directly use Next.js because it's just going to be one of the most scalable and easiest sites to actually deploy, which we're going to get to later. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go with Next.js, but if you are trying to build like a desktop application, you're building something much larger, you want it to be super performant, you may go with another stack, especially if you're going to have a dedicated backend, if you even know what that means. But in our case, we're just building something visual, right? Where it's just you're interacting with it, it's giving you information. If you want to build something that has a lot of data, users, accounts, like a social media platform, that's when it's going to get a little bit more complex, and you're going to have a backend plus a front end, in which case Next.js is still going to be a good option, but you're also going to have to connect to things like databases, which you'd want to talk to Claude about. So for now, we're going to go with Next.js, but just be aware that if you do want to store data, which I don't really need to do for this site, this will change the decision a little bit, and you should really discuss with the AI beforehand what decisions you need to make so it will support what you want to do with the site. And that's why it's so important that you know what you want to build before you dive into this process. So I'm going to go here with Next.js and I'm going to submit these answers, and now it should start generating that plan, which we'll then review before we start building. All right, so now it knows the design that we want to use, but it's asking me a ton of questions about what I actually want to put on the site. So I'm just going to fill these in and then we'll go from there. Again, you'll need to do the same thing so you actually know the content that's going to go on the site. All right, so what I did here is I just told it to go research myself rather than me giving it all of the details. It was able to do that. And now it's generated this spec.md file, which we should see in this file menu on the left-hand side. So if we want, we can have a look at this, scroll through, make sure that we're happy with obviously everything that it's given us. It's also laid out kind of how it's going to develop this application. And notice that we have a lot of structure now. So when Claude Code starts to actually write the code, it can just follow the spec. And let's say we were to stop and come back to it another day, it can always just go back and look at the spec file, which is why I always recommend starting like this. So now that we have that information, we can essentially just tell it to proceed to build our website. And again, a lot of the hard work is kind of done because the spec is already written, which is really where most of the hard work, happens, right? And the reason why you'll get into a lot of issues when you're building with AI is because you don't follow that planning step up front. So now what we're going to do is essentially just tell it to build the site. So I'm going to say, okay, this spec looks great. I want you to build out the full website right now. Keep it MVP, don't make it too complicated, and then run the site so I can view it on my computer. That's it. That's all we're going to tell it. MVP means minimum viable product. I always like to tell it to build a slim version first before we go and add, a million features, because AI is better at discrete small tasks. So the less stuff you get it to do in one run, the better results you're going to get. And then you just have to go kind of back and forth and tell it, okay, add this feature. Okay, add this feature, as you're going to see in a second. So let's go ahead and press enter and get the result. All right, now it's asking me permission to run these commands. So I'm going to go ahead and press on yes. And just by the way, it may want to run a command for you that you don't yet have or that you haven't installed on your machine. If that's the case and something's going wrong, you can tell it, hey, give me the instructions on how to install this, or what do I need for this to work? And Claude Code's pretty good at doing that. So it should be able to do it by itself, but if it doesn't, don't freak out. Just ask the AI and it can tell you exactly what to do if you just read the response. So let's go yes and keep going. Nice, so it says that it's running the application now. It just took maybe 5-6 minutes to build that. So I'm just gonna press on this URL and you'll notice that we get the app now, right? It's open directly inside of Cursor. If you don't wanna open it in Cursor for some reason, you could just open up Google Chrome. And you can just paste the URL here. You can see it's localhost 3001, which just means that it's running locally on your computer. Now, I actually think this looks quite nice. I started coding as a kid, okay. All these stats are true. Languages, yeah, that looks pretty good. Where I've worked, yeah, software engineer. I don't know about SAP. I don't know what it's saying with that. Yeah, not sure what that means. Microsoft is real, some projects I've worked on. Here's some videos, free code camp where I've been featured, dev launch, a program I was running, let's talk, my email, and then all of the stats. And again, this was built with just 2 or 3 prompts because I spent the time actually creating this spec up front. You can see 2026, we have all this stuff. And of course, if I want to add it, refine it, etc., then I could tell it to do that. and we would get, a better site. But at this point, I mean, I'm kind of done. That's exactly what I wanted to build. And what I want to do now is move on to actually deploy the site. So of course, go back and forth, iterate with it. But what we'll do now is we'll deploy it, but we're also just going to quickly use something called Git in GitHub to kind of store our progress to make sure that if we make a change or if we break something, we can roll back in the future. Now, if you're a beginner, you don't really need to understand what it is that we're about to do, but by setting this up, Claude will be able to automatically go back to previous kind of saves of your website just by you giving it this one prompt. So this is the prompt you're going to say. This is great. What I would like you to do now is to create a Git repo and just save all of the work as a commit. And I would like you to continually keep creating commits anytime we make a change so I can roll back to something if a mistake happens in the future. You don't need to say word for word like that, but that's essentially what you're going to say. Hey, set up Git. It should then install the Git tool if you don't already have it on your computer. And then you can see it's going to tell us to initialize a new Git repo and run these commands that you're probably not familiar with. Essentially, all Git is a version control software, which, like I said, is going to kind of checkpoint or save the work that you've done. So anytime you make another change, if something goes wrong, you can just go back to the previous change and everything is still stored. This is what software engineers have been using for decades now. And you can also connect this to something called GitHub, which will allow you to share this code with other people on the internet, but we're not going to do that right now. All right, so it says it's set it up with Git now and it's saved everything. So we are all good. And now we're going to move to the deployment. Now, like I mentioned, we're going to be using Hostinger to deploy this application. Now, you can do this for as low as just $4 per month, which is extremely cheap for web hosting, and they're actually going to give you a free domain, and the benefit of this is that you can do it directly from Claude Code with really no setup whatsoever. So what we're going to need to do is just create a new account on Hostinger and just purchase our hosting plan. You can use something else, obviously, if you want, but this is what I recommend and what is very affordable and cheap to do. So just go to this URL. I'll leave a link to the description. Go to View Plans, and then go to Choose Plan, and you can choose the Cloud Startup one or the Business Plan, depending on what it is that you're doing. But for most of you, you just need the cheap plan here, which is $3.99 per month. So I'm going to go to Choose Plan, and that's going to bring me to this page. Now from here, what we need to do is select the duration of our plan. If you select one greater than 12 months, then you can use this coupon code TechWithTim because of my partnership with Hostinger, and it will give you an additional 10% off, as you can see here. We're then going to pick the domain that we want to host this on. So I probably want timrasica.com or something. I don't know if that's available, but let's see. Okay, and you can see it's free actually, so I probably should have had that before, but anyways, let's get that domain. If you just want it 1 year for now, just select 1 year. If you want 2, 3, etc., just pick what it is that you want, and then go ahead and press on continue. All right, now as you go through this process, you will need to register your details. This is required whenever you purchase a domain. There might be a few other things to fill in, but it should be very straightforward. And then it will give you access to the web hosting, which will then be able to plug directly into Claude Code and have it handle all of the deployment for us. All right, now from here, it may ask you to connect with GitHub or to upload your files. Just go with upload files for now because we're going to do this from the connector, but you also could connect this with a GitHub repo if you already have. And now it's going to prepare the server space. Okay, now once you get to this page here, it's going to have prepared the server space, and it's going to ask you to upload a file. Now you need to upload something just so we can proceed because this step forces you to upload something effectively, but we can manage the deployment from Claude Code in just a second. So what you're gonna need to do is you're gonna have to go and find your folder. So in my case, it was my site. And what I did just because I'm on Mac is I compressed it. Now, if you're on Windows, you could just compress this as well, use 7-zip, whatever you wanna do, so that you get a zip folder, okay? Then we're just gonna go ahead and press on continue. And what this is gonna do now is start deploying the site based on the files that we attached. So we attached this Next.js kind of zip folder, right? And we'll just go ahead and press on deploy. We don't need to change anything here, and it will start deploying this to our domain. Now, this will give us a base deployment of the site that we currently have, but where this gets more useful is that if we change something now in Claude Code, I'm going to show you in a second, we can just tell it to automatically deploy, and it will push to Hostinger for us so that we don't need to go through this process every single time. It's just when we're setting it up, then we can go back to Claude Code, and with natural language, when we connect the connector, we can see the domains, push it, etc. And just keep in mind that you can actually host multiple different sites on the Hostinger deployed instance that you have here. There's a lot of other features that it gives you, but I think for the one that we used, you can have like 5 different sites. All right, so it looks like the site was deployed, just took a minute here. And then if we go to our URL, we can see that it appears at timrasica.com or whatever URL obviously you used. Now, this is great, but what I want to do is close this now. So if you've closed that, you should be brought back to the H panel here for Hostinger, and this is how you can manage your site in the future. So if you go to websites and you go to all websites here, you should see the site that you deployed. You can have a look at it. For example, there's tools, like you can see the analytics and the files. You can also go to the dashboard. From here, you can connect to database, manage your files, go to the deployments, right, and manage the domain. Now, from the domain side of things, if you want, you can actually get an email here if you go to the domain. So go to domain, overview, select the one that you have, renew it, whatever, go through all of the different details here, and then you can create different sites and whatnot from here if you wanted to. Okay, now this is cool. What we're gonna do is go over to this API section here, and we're gonna generate an API token because this is now how we'll be able to do the deployment directly from Claude Code in the future. So again, on the left-hand side, you're gonna go here to generate token. For the token name, I'll just give it a never expires, and I'm just gonna call this Claude Code, and then generate. Okay, now I'm gonna copy this token, make sure you don't share it with anyone, and we're gonna go back here, and we're going to find the Hostinger extension now that we installed so that we can start managing all of this from our kind of AI agent rather than needing to go to the platform. So what we're going to do is press on this little down arrow, and assuming that we install that Hostinger extension, we should see it appear right here. From here, we can just paste our API token that we just generated. It also shows you how to get it in case you didn't follow that step, and then just press on connect. Now it says that it's connected, so now that it's connected, we can literally just go to Claude Code and say, hey, what websites and domains do I have with Hostinger? Right? And then just press enter, and it should now be able to use this and give us the results. All right, so I asked it this, but for some reason it wasn't able to find the MCP server, and I believe it's due to how Claude Code is kind of working directly inside of Cursor. Now I'm just gonna quickly show you that if we go to the settings here of Cursor, so let me just find settings, and we search for MCP, so you'll see that if we find MCP, which should be over here, tools and MCP, that there is a Hostinger tool that's automatically been added, which is known as an MCP server or Model Context Protocol. Don't worry too much about exactly what that means. The thing is, the MCP server is here. The issue is just that the Claude Code session itself, for some reason, isn't able to access that MCP server, but Cursor itself can. So for example, if we were to open up a new agent window, so if we just go here to this toggle agent and we said, hey, what websites and domains do I have with Hostinger? Then this will give us the response because it has access to the MCP server here, but just not in Claude Code, which I'm going to show you how to fix in 1 second. And I just had to switch over to agent mode because it was telling me, hey, I can't call the tools, but you can see we have timrasica.com, right? We have all of this stuff available, and then we are good to go. And if I wanted to, I could just tell it, hey, redeploy the site, and it can do that from here. Now that's great, but of course the point is we wanted to get this in Claude Code, so I'm going to show you how we can add that. So if we go back to the API page here that we were on in Hostinger, so you'll notice that there's a configuration here that we can just copy to add this to Claude Code. So it says, hey, add this config file, restart Claude Code, verify the connection, you're all set. So what I'm going to do is just go here, and I'm just going to paste it in and say, add this configuration to my Claude Code. And then for the token, we're just going to replace the token with the token that we had here. So I'm going to regenerate this one and then copy it. Okay, so I'm just going to paste that token inside of there. Of course, don't share that with anyone. I'll regenerate it after. And then it should be able to add the MCP config for us. Again, the connector should have done this, but I think just how Claude Code is generating, sometimes it doesn't show up. So if it's not working for you, you can do this to get it in Claude Code. Otherwise, you can use it from the agent inside of Cursor. I know it's a bit weird, but you have Claude Code, you have a Cursor agent, so there's like a lot of different config that you could do. I'm just showing you all of the options. Okay, so that worked. So now what I did is I just started a new Claude Code session here, and if you type /MCP and you go to MCP servers, you can see the Hostinger MCP is now connected, has available all of the different tools, and we can use it to deploy, right? So I could say, deploy my project now, change the name of the site rather than Tim Rasica to be Tim Tech. I don't know, something like that, just so we can see if it's different. And then it can go now, use these tools and deploy it. Okay, and we can see that it's now redeployed. Again, just doing it from natural language this time. I didn't have to do it from the dashboard, so I can just do it all from Claude Code. And if I open it up, you can see it says Tim Tech, right? And it's changed the name up here to Tim Tech rather than Tim Rasica like we had before. So there you go, guys. That is how you build and deploy a website using Claude Code, at least as of now, until they change something in the software later. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.